Hello, welcome to Z-Talk. This session, I'd like to talk about Azure Logic App. Logic App is a service that allows you to schedule, automate, and orchestrate tasks, business processes, and workflows when you need to integrate apps, data, or services. Basically, what you're gonna do is to create a flow that represents your business needs. How does it work? Well, the flow structure is pretty simple. It's an action followed by an action. And of course, it provides you flexibility to create much more complex solutions by introducing different types of actions, like conditional action. But let's start with something simple, as it's always easier to understand the essence of the structure with something simple, right? If you look at the diagram on the right side of the slide, assume we had a flow with three actions followed by each other. Each action by default always has an input and output. And let's imagine a use case. For an input, we got a person object, and we extract two properties of like age and name from that person object, which is going to be the output of this action, the first action. Now we can use age and name as input in the second action for creating additional logic. For example, we can calculate if this person is an adult or not. Then we have an additional output which we can use in the third action as an input, right? What's more, Logic App allows you to grab output from previous actions, like the first action, like the name we extract in the first action. So this is a powerful feature as you're able to combine information from multiple steps to create more complex logic, right? Okay, we have the workflow. Now the question is, how do we start this flow? Let's move to the first action. So the first action in a Logic App, it's actually called a trigger because it's a specific action that invokes entire flow. This trigger can be called by various sources, a web request, or maybe a schedule-based trigger, or maybe it's just an Office 365 event, or maybe it's a blob storage event on Azure, whatever, you just name it, right? There are over 200 connectors available that you can use for your integration. Okay, it's demo time. So let's jump to the demo to explain more in detail. So for demo, I plan to have two demos. The first one is going to be extremely easy. It's just a user initiate a request from his browser, and and then he got a response, right? So let's see how do we automate that process via Logic App. And then we move to the real demo. For the use case, we're gonna create a Logic App workflow to route Azure Monitor alerts to multiple Teams channels based on the types of the alerts. All right. Okay. Before I jump to the demo, always just remember sum up my video, subscribe my channel if you haven't done so, and more importantly, leave comments if you have any questions. All right? Cool. I'm on my Azure portal. Let's start with creating Logic App instance. In the search bar, search for Logic App, hit enter, and click add consumption. Here I'm gonna store this instance under demo resource group, and I'll give a name Logic App -demo, and click review and create, Okay, the deployment is done, so let's go to the resource. Now we are in the Logic App designer interface. So you can see it's out of box. It provides you common triggers based on different use cases, and it also provides tons of templates you can use directly. But for our first demo, the use case is extremely simple. It's just get us familiarized with the interface. So the use case is like a user initiate a HTTP request, and he gets the response after initiate that request, right? So let's create that flow by starting with a blank Logic App. So the trigger action will be a request, HTTP request, right? So let's just search for request. Here, and you can see there are 3 triggers available you can select. So it seems the first one, when a HTTP request is received, fits our need, right? Just click that, and you will see URL will be generated after save. Basically, once we save our flow, a testing URL will be created, so we can use that URL to test our flow. And you can also see by default, the method, HTTP method is post. But for our use case, our method gonna be get. So let's change the method from post to get by click add new parameter and check method and click somewhere else, and you will see a menu drop down and just select the get method. That's pretty much it. So this is the first action, trigger action. We're gonna initiate a HTTP GET request. And let's minimize this action. And the next one, we initiate a request and we're expecting a response, right? So the next action will be a response. Click new step and search for response. Okay, here are request response. Hit that. And of course, the response will be a 200 status code. And let's do some customization. How about in the body, we put in some text message like, hey, what's up? Okay, so what we're expecting, so once we hit that request, and we should get a response with a message, hey, what's up, in the body of that response, right? All right, so it's pretty much finished or flow. Let's save it. And for these Logic App designer interface, so currently we're in the designer mode, so where we can see our logic here, right? But we can also switch to code view. Basically, it converts our logic to JSON code, but it's basically exactly the same thing like designer. So we can switch back and forth to see in different view. And another one we're gonna use is always, of course, run. So basically, once we finished up our flow, we can click run for testing if our flow works or not, right? Click that. And you will see it returns a green status code for each step. And here it shows something wrong, and let's take a look why. So action response skipped. The client application is now waiting for a response from service. That's not a big deal, that's fine. So let's click this instance name here, and in the overview, so we can see the run history and trigger history, right? So click run history, and refresh, there should be a record. Yeah, here we go. So this was the one we just hit run in the previous interface for testing, right? It shows the status was succeeded, right? So if you click here in detail, and you will see the run detail, right? And here, that's the run detail, and that's the URL automatically generated after we click save or flow. So let's jump back to the designer mode and click the first one, and here we can grab the URL for testing. Because Logic App will automate these processes. Let's see what we get. So let's copy this URL and generate this request. So what we're looking for is going to be a response with that text message, hey, what's up? Once we hit enter, right? Hit enter. Here we go. This the response like automatically created by the Logic App. Cool, it's worked, right? So now we kind of get familiarized the interface and how we're gonna where we start to create or flow. So now let's jump to the real demo. So the use case is we're gonna create flow to route the Azure alerts based on the tag or the information of each different alert, and route those alerts to different Microsoft Teams channels. Let's do that. Okay, so I write it down, the use case and my sub process to help you better understand this logic flow and the use case. So for use case, assume we have multiple VMs and we wanted to route the alerts from different VMs to different Microsoft Teams channel based on the environment tag that we defined in each of the VMs. So for example, if a VM belongs to production group, its alert should be routed to production group's Teams channel. On the other hand, if the VM belongs to testing environment, its alert should be routed to testing Teams channel. Make sense? All right, so here I sorted up my sub process by writing down each action item. So the first action is still gonna be when a HTTP request is received. Basically, we're gonna receive the alert event, right? So once we receive the alert event, we're going to parse that event to extract alert target ID, which contains subscription and resources group information in that string. And we're gonna store that alert target ID to a variable for further parsing. So the third action, we're gonna further parse the alert target ID to extract subscription ID and resource group, and we're gonna store subscription ID and resource group to another two variables for further steps use, right? And next step, we're gonna pass the subscription ID and resource group variables to an action called list resources by resources group, because the goal is we need to find the tag that was attached to each of the VMs. So by perform this action is able to return all the informations for each of the VM. So then it goes to step 5. So the above action returns information of all resources in this resource group, right? So we're gonna perform some filter to only return the resources that we are interested in, right? And the last step, once we have the resources ID and we can get the tag from it and use switch action to send it to different team channels. Basically, that's the logic app flow we're gonna build. And let's jump to Azure portal. We need to prepare the VM and set up the alert ahead of time. So let me switch back to my Azure portal. So I already spin up two Windows VMs ahead of time. So if you see the naming convention, these VMs start with D because it's a testing environment, and P, I will use P stands for production, right? So if I go to these VM, and you can see I create a tag called environment, and its environment tag is testing. On the other hand, for PVM01 VM, so the environment tag is production. So we're gonna use these tags to determine which Teams channel the alerts should be routed to. All right. Okay, and then let's jump to the alerts. I also have already created alerts here. So if you click Manage Alert Rule, and I create a CPU usage alert for the two Windows VMs that was spun up, right? Here you can see the scope is for these two VM, and the condition I set is if the CPU usage at any VM is more than 50, the threshold is 50, you're gonna trigger the alerts. But once we configure the logic app, finish up our logic app flow, I'm gonna lower it down the threshold to 0 so that we can trigger this event to get some alert event feed to our logic flow, business flow, right? So that's pretty much it. So I haven't started the logic app yet, but once we finish the logic app, so what we need to do, we need to add an action. By add action, we need to create a action group and put it to the demo resource group and give the action group name my action. And notification, we don't need any notification, we need an action. So the action type will be logic app, and the name of the logic app is gonna be the instance we create over there in the logic app interface. So we will come back later for finish up these configuration. Let me cancel it out and go to logic app. Go to logic app. Here, I already created a logic app instance. Let me click here. So now we need to start working on the flow, business flow, logic flow, right? So I'm still gonna use blank logic app template. That's build it up. So as I said, the first step is still gonna be request. So let's click that and select when a HTTP request is received. Click that. Okay, here says request body JSON schema. So we need to grab the schema for the metric alert. Because that CPU usage is the metric alert. We need to find out the alert schema from Microsoft Azure documentation. So I already found it here. I will share this link. So basically, it's provides you these the schema, right? So what you can do, you see here, this is for metric alert. What you need to do, you just need to copy that schema and paste over there. So go back to Logic App Designer and go back to here and paste the schema down here. That's pretty much it. Is we finished the first action, the trigger action. All right, so let's minimize this and click save. All right, let's run it. Yeah, it shows a health indicator, green health indicator. So we're good, right? So since these logic app instance, this logic flow already saved, we can jump back to the alert to include this logic app. So let me go back to the alert. All right, and click manage alert rule and click CPU usage, and here we're gonna add that action. Click action groups and click create action group, and I'm gonna store this action group to under demo resource group, and I'll give name my action. And notifications, I don't need notification, I need actions. So basically notification is where you put, for example, I want an email alert or text message, something like that. You can put it here. But for this use case, I don't need notification. I just need action. And in the action type, I'm gonna select Logic App, and I will give a name of this instance called VM alerts. All right, and I'm gonna select the Logic App instance, which gonna be this guy, the one we just created. Click that, and we need to enable the common large schema, and click OK, and click review and create, and create. And save. All right, it's done. So once the alert condition is violated and the alert is fired, the events will be fed to these Logic App instance as we define in the action. All right, so what I need to do, I will jump back to Logic App Designer to finish up the flow, and in the meantime, I'm gonna lower down the threshold to trigger some event so we can see the real alert start feeding to the Logic App. All right. Okay, I lowered down my alert threshold to 0 so that I can the alert should be triggered, and that's what actually happened. You can see the alerts, CPU usage alert, were triggered as expected for both VMs. You know, one for PVM01, the other for PDVM01, right? So that's exactly what I'm looking for. And let's jump back to the Logic App interface and click Overview, and you can see in the run history is recorded that that events. So here we go. And if we click one of them to see the detail by expanding and click show raw outputs, and you can see these was the alerts we configure. You see the metric name is percentage CPU and threshold was 0, right? And here as or logic plan in my notes. So right, so the next step, I'm gonna parse the event to extract alert target ID, which contains subscription and resource group information, and store it to a variable. Let's find out what's that alert target ID looks like. Where is it? Alert target ID. Here we go. So alert target IDs. It's array, but you can see is in these elements of this array. It's a string, and you can see the subscription ID here, and the name of the resource group here. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So the next step, I'm gonna extract this string first and store it to a variable, and the following action, I'm gonna continue parse this string to extract the ID and name of the resource group out for the following actions. That's the plan. All right, so let's do that. Okay, I duplicate my browser so I can see the output of the alert event, right? So this is the event value I'm gonna extract from this event, the alert target ID. So we need some reference from the Microsoft documentation to see what functions available we can use to parse these events. So here are, so this is the documentation. It lists out all the functions available that we can use to parse the events. So I will share the link in the description of my video. So feel free to grab it and take a look. So the first function we're going to use is called triggerBody. So the triggerBody returns a trigger's body output at runtime. That's exactly what I need, right? And let's follow the triggerBody's syntax and extract the JSON event. And firstly, we need to locate these, follow the structure of JSON level by level, and go to this level to grab these value. All right, and also note it. So this variable, this alert target IDs, it's actually an array, and as you can see in the documentation, the return value of return type of this triggerBody function is actually a string. So what we need to do, back to the outputs, we only need the first element of this array. So that's what we're gonna do. So let me jump back to the designer mode and add a new step. So if you remember my plan in the note, and I'm gonna create a variable and store that string, parse string, to that variable to future use. So I will search for variable, and here, and I will initialize a variable, and let's give it the variable name. Let's call it TargetID, and the type of this variable is gonna be a string, and the value is, let's write a function because that's gonna be a expression. So follow that syntax. Here is what is gonna extract that value. So it involves two functions. The first function is toLower. Basically, is you can see this string. There are we're gonna convert the string to all lowercase. So here is already all lowercase. Just in case they have different uppercase, lowercase, we just make it everything all lowercase. And triggerBody. So that's the important one, right? Follow the syntax and follow that structure of the JSON format. So right, so we need to go to body and go to data and the body, and then go to essentials. That's where these alert target ID from, right? And then we're gonna grab the first string. The first element is index 0, right? So let's jump back here. So here, data, essential, alert, target ID, and index 0, I'm only gonna need the first element inside of this array, right? And click OK. It's pretty much done. Let's save it and verify. Go back to the overview and run history and grab a history run. So let's take a look. So this guy had the real event. Let's resubmit for testing. Resubmit. All right, and refresh history. There's a new one, right? New record. Click that, and let's verify if that parse worked. Yep. See here, the value, it worked. It's extract that value and store this whole string to these target ID variable we defined. Cool. Okay, I give a better name of each of action, like this action, I rename it to get target ID. So you can do renaming by click here, the 3-dot icon, and click rename, all right? And so as per our plan, so we got the target ID and stored to these target ID variable, and the next action, we're gonna extract subscription ID and the name of the resource group, right? So that's what we're gonna do. And same thing, I'm gonna initialize a variable to store subscription. And again, it's the same, it's a string type. And I'll call this variable subscription. And we're still gonna need some function to extract it out, right? So here's the expression. Let me copy this expression. It's a little bit complex. So let me copy the whole thing to the my note. So let me explain a little bit. So here, this is the string we're gonna deal with to extract the data from, and this is the function we're gonna use to extract the data. So it's a little bit long, but let me explain to help you understand, right? So let's start. You can see it involves multiple functions. Let's start one by one. Let's start from the beginning, and substring. So go to the reference guide and search for substring and figure out what this function does. Substring. Okay, here, substring. Substring returns characters from a string starting from a specified position. Let's click that and see the parameters involved. So it requires 3 parameters. The first one is text. Basically, it's the string we need to deal with, right? And next parameter is gonna be the start index. It's the integer, and it's basically tells you starting from these index, I'm gonna start extract that substring. And the last one, of course, is the length. So it's basically these 2 parameters defined where we're gonna take the substring out of that string, right? So follow this syntax. Let's jump back to my notes. So I divided these separate it out so you can easily to follow that syntax. You can easily see what's section each section for. The first section is for providing the string we need to deal with, right? That's why I use this one. So these variables is another function. Basically, it just returns the content of that of the variable. You see the target ID was the variable we defined in the previous action, right? So what we're gonna do, these gonna be the string we deal with. So this is what the first line for. And the second line is what we need to do. We need to provide the starting index where we're gonna extract these the substring from, right? So let's see. This also involves multiple functions. Let's start from the inside. What's this indexOf function for? So let's go back to the reference and search for indexOf. And you can see indexOf function, it returns the starting position for a substring, right? And you can see the type is the integer. And for example, like indexOf, this is the original string hello world and the substring. So what this function does is to return the starting index value of these substring world. So you can see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So because the index start from 0, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? So that's basically what this function does. Then let's go back to the go back here and see the index of variable target value, target ID, and the substring is this guy /subscriptions/ this is the substring I'm looking for, and the index of course is gonna return 0 because this is where this start from. This from index 0, right? / right, the first index value, right? So it's gonna return 0, and the next one is a function called length. Apparently it's returned the length is another integer value, and it returned the length of this substring. So, and now you can understand what this is about. It's the last part is the add function. Basically it add these two values up, then we got a new index, which is here, is the starting index of the substring that I needed, the subscription ID. So that's pretty much the second parameter that required for substring function, right? Then let's jump to the last one. The last one is the length, right? So we need to figure out the substring we need, the length of this substring. How do we do that? Similar idea. So let's take a look at these lastIndexOf, what this function does. Copy that and put it to here and here. lastIndexOf. This function returns the starting position or index value for the last occurrence of a substring. All right. So let's go back to the sticker, and this is the substring I'm looking for. The last appearance apparently is here. So it's returned the index, the first index of these guys. So it's gonna be here, right? So we're gonna return the integer value of the index here. So the next one, apparently I'm gonna need the index value here. Then we use this value minus this value, then we got the length of the substring that we need, right? That's why I use, subtraction function here. And here we already got the index here, and apparently this section gonna return the index value here, right? So it's add index of variable subscription is 0, right? As they expand, and plus the length of these substring, so it returns the location index here. Then use these index minus the index, we got the length of these substring that we need. Clear? Right. Let's test it out. Let's copy this out and paste it to the expression here and click update and save it. And then we can test it out to see if the parse works as expected, right? So go back to overview and click, let's find a history one, this guy. So let's resubmit. Okay, and refresh and click that and see what do we got. Perfect. See the value? That's exactly what we're looking for, right? So next action, we're gonna it's gonna be the exactly same logic. We're gonna extract. We're gonna create another variable and extract the name of the resource group out of that string here from these variable. Same thing. So I will do that real quick. Okay, for saving some time, because the next action grab the name of the resource group, the idea is exactly same as the previous action for grabbing subscription ID. So I just did the same thing, and don't worry. So it's a good opportunity to try it out yourself to see if you understand my explanation. And don't worry, I will share this function in the subscription of the video, so you can use to compare. So if is something wrong on your end, all right. And the things I want to mention. So if you remember, beside designer view, there's another view, a code view. So this view sometimes is really helpful, especially for this case, right? So because the idea is exactly same, what you need to do, so instead of doing it over there in the designing mode, we can just copy this section of code, the previous action you see here, basically is converted our logic to code to JSON format, right? So we can copy that and paste it over here, right? So because exactly same, we just need to add it. So it's this way is way faster than designer mode. So that's thing. So that's what I was mentioning. We can switch between these two modes to make our configuration faster. All right. So let's test out. Go back to overview and regenerate these tests. Resubmit. And refresh and click that, and let's see, do we got the, yeah, here we go, demo. So that's exactly what we need, right? Cool. All right, now we got what we need, the ID, subscription ID and the name of the resource group. And next step, we're gonna use that action, right? List resources by resource group, so that we can get the tag information we defined in each of the VMs. Let's do that. All right, the next action, let's start at the next action. To choose the next operations here, just type in list resource by resource group, and here we go. This is the one we need. List resource by resource group. This is an action. Click that, and you can see it needs you to put to sign in. All right, click that, and I'll do sign in. All right, so here it's two parameters. It requires subscription and resource group. That's why we grab that two variables, parse that values, and store to the variables. Now we can call that variable and pass the variable to here, right? So what we need to do here, we need to and then there's subscription, click the drop down menu, enter custom value. We need to make it dynamic because right now for my demo purpose, I only have one subscription, but in real case, maybe in your enterprise, you have multiple subscriptions and multiple resource groups, right? So we need to make it as dynamic instead of manually hard coding the subscription name and resource group name, right? So let's enter custom value, right? So here is gonna be another expression. So we need to just in case the variable contains some white space from the string, so we need to use these trim function just in case, right? What this does is just remove leading and trailing white space from a string, right? Cool. So let's jump back here and use trim and variable function, and we need what variable we need is the first variable is subscription, right? So in the second it's RG, that's the variable name. So let's type it again. First one is gonna be trim variables subscription. Click OK, and the next will be resource group, right? So it's same thing, custom value expression is gonna be trim and variables RG. Okay. All right, so that's it, and save it. And let's test it again. So go back to overview and resubmit event. Here, resubmit. Refresh, and here we go. And here everything works expected. Let's see what do we got. You see here, show row outputs. It's basically lists out all the values, like, right, all the resources by resource group. That's exactly what we need. And you see the tag information, that's what we're looking for, these two guys. And there's another one for production here, so we're looking for those tags, right? All right, let's jump to the next. Okay, now like I explained, it's these list resources by resource group, right? It's list out all the resources, but we don't necessarily need all of those resources. We only need the resource that we cared about, right? So like this guy, which contain like this guy, right? But for example, this guy, I don't care about it. So that's why we need to do some filter operation. So let's jump back to here, and the next step gonna be something. Let's do filter data operations. All right, so what filter are we gonna do? We're gonna do the filter array, because you see here the output is this body is a huge array, so that's what we need, right? So we need to do some. We're gonna select this filter array, and array to filter from. This time we're gonna select the content value, right? The list of resources, that's the last step. Select that. So that's the source we're gonna filter from, right? So choose a value. So we need to put in some conditions, or how do we want to filter things out, right? So it's another expression here. I'm gonna use this expression. Again, first one is toLower, basically to make all the string as lowercase, and item. So here's involved another function called item. So basically, item returns the current item in the array during the action's current iteration. So let's see in action ID. So here, go back here. So because I need to use this as filter, I only need the ID, the string that matches the one I want, right? So let's go back here. So click OK, and condition is equal to, right? And choose the value. Same thing. So we're gonna do a expression and to lowercase, and we're gonna trim the white space and variables. What variable? Remember the first variable where we store the target ID. That's what we need, right? So here we put in target ID. Here, copy that and put it here. Let's go. So let's type it again. To lowercase, trim variables, and target ID. Yeah, that's the filter conditions. All right, so let's save it and test it out. Go back to overview again and resubmit. Refresh, and here let's see what it returns. Outputs, show raw outputs. All right, so this time we get way less data. So basically filter out things out, right? So this is the ID that I need, right? So cool. Then go back to the condition. Go back to the designer view, and what's next? So we got everything we need, and now we need to do some switch to hook up with our Microsoft Teams channels. Okay, one more step before we're able to hook up with Microsoft Teams, right? So in the previous action, we filtered out the resources to only keep the one we cared about, right? So I copied that and down to my note. So this was the one left based on the condition here, ID. This is the one I really care about, right? So, and as remember, as per my design, so we're gonna use the tag to determine specifically these key value here, this value, to as the key indicator to determine how we're gonna route our events, right? Now that's turns out we do not necessarily need the whole content of this return from the previous action. We need to do further parsing. Basically, specifically, actually, this is the only thing we need as the indicator. So we need to parse it out as like the same way to initiate a variable to store these string. All right. So for doing that, click a variable, create a variable, and the type is going to be string, and we need to parse it out. So here's the function. toLower, of course you already know, so it's just basically convert the character to lowercase, and I use the body function. Let's take a look at the body function. This is something new. So basically what this function does is to return an action's body output at runtime. So that's what I need. The body, I'm gonna need this body from the previous action. I give these action name filter, so I put the name here. So is grabbing the content of these action. Then let's take a look my node again. So you can see this is the array type, right? So what we need to do, we need to grab the information inside of this array. So index 0, right? So it's grab the first item inside of this array, and then we need to follow the structure. So tags, right? And then it's a key value pair. So I need to grab the value of these key value pair. So environment. Then that's how we grab the value here. And click update, and let's test it out. Go to save it and go to overview and resubmit. Refresh, and here we go. Here we go. So we got what we want, testing. So that's gonna be the key indicator. Now we are good to go to create the last action in our flow. So go back to designer and add step. I'll go to control, switch. Switch control, right? So switch on a value. So switch on, of course, tag. What do we name? Names tag, of course. So here, let's choose that tag variable. All right, and here we need to give the case. So if the tag equals testing, right? So add an action. So what action? So we need to hook up with Microsoft Teams. So it's already a action available. Just search for MS Teams. So expand it, and you see here Microsoft Teams. Now there's different options of actions you can select, so you can play with it a little bit. For me, I just select this, post a message. So if you do, because this is not my first time, if it's your first time on your end, so it will show like here, instead of directly showing up Teams channels, because here I already hook up with my Teams application. So you see here it's already showing up the Teams that currently available in my Teams, Microsoft Teams software, and also it shows all the channels, right? So for you, if you log in for the first time, you will go through the authentication. Basically, it's gonna show in the same window for authentication. Once you pass the authentication, is jump to this page, and it's all those existing information like come out of box. You don't have to configure anything else. So it's showing automatically show you. You just pick the channels where you want to route the event to here, and select the channel and put the custom message, whatever you want. Like for example, you can put some variables, expression variable, tags, rec subscription. You can just basically customize as whatever you want. You can use the variable, and also you can type in some the note. This alert is for VM CPU usage. All right, and then you can just, that's pretty much it. So once you save that and run another test, it's gonna feed the event or the format of your message to your channel, Teams channel that you defined, right? Same thing for the other. So this one is the condition if that tag value equals to testing. As per our design, right? So we for different VMs, it belongs to different environments, right? If we have other environment like production, QA, performance, we can expand to create other cases. And here we can keep adding different cases, but the logic same, to give a different value and route it to different place. So for this section is pretty straightforward, so I'm not gonna waste your time to show you, so you can play with it on your own. I believe you can figure it out yourself. The most important part is this section. I hope after my explanation you get better understanding how Logic App works, right? So pick up a use case on your own and start doing create your flow. Then let me know if you have any questions. Again, remember to comment if you have questions. All right, thanks for watching. This is all I want to share for this session. See you next week. Alright, thank you for watching my video. If you think this video is helpful, you're more than welcome to leave any comments. Remember, thumb up, subscribe my video, and also hit the notification bell. See you next time.